During his first presidential campaign, President Trump said, "We're going to win so much. You're going to get tired of winning." And you'll say, "Mr. Trump, please, it's too much winning." The truth of the matter is that recently President Trump and his administration proposed a bill called the Big Beautiful Bill. And although it sounds good, in reality, this bill is not good at all. For example, this bill increases funding for ICE and other ICE-related services. It restricts access to contraceptives, and it decreases the funding for Planned Parenthood. It defunds Medicaid and SNAP programs, which many Americans use very much to afford living comfortably. And it provides tax breaks, but only for the rich and wealthy corporations, which are paid for by the lower and middle class. Now, we should care about this because this is going to devastate a lot of Americans, and it's going to affect a majority of Americans negatively. In an article by Washington Post, it explains that some studies suggest that up to 1 in 5 Americans will be affected by this bill negatively. So first, I will be discussing the ethical and the financial issues of this bill. Next, I will be discussing why this bill has been proposed in the first place, and finally, I will suggest what we can realistically do about it. So, first, let's discuss the financial and ethical issues with this bill. So, this bill increases the national debt by around $2.8 trillion, with some expecting it to rise up to $3 trillion. It decreases the funding for Medicaid by $793 million. It decreases the funding for Planned Parenthood by 20%, SNAP services by 20%. It increases the funding for ICE by over $900 million, and if you include other fundings for it, like the funding for Alcatraz and other concentration camps, it increases up to $1.5 trillion, making ICE the largest government enforcement agency. So what would the harms of this be brought upon by the bill? So first, it supports legal discrimination, since ICE's tactics are known to include discrimination of people without any logical reasoning. So apart from that, it also affects the lower and middle class as well as students economically. And it also increases the debt, as we know, and it increases the chances of teen pregnancy due to decreased access to contraceptives and defunding of Planned Parenthood, as well as the trauma for kids and adolescents is expected to rise as a direct result of this. Next, let's dive into why this bill is being proposed. Well, this bill is largely being proposed to satisfy the goals of the right, being tax cuts, less government involvement, increased border security, and stronger state governments. Now that we know why it's been proposed, what can we do about this bill? Well, when it comes to this bill, in order to lessen the damages, we have 2 options. Option 1, we could sue the bill for potential violations to the Constitution. And option 2, we could protest the bill. So in the first option, the bill potentially violates Amendments 14, 4, 6, and potentially the First Amendment as well. So if sued and then taken up to the Supreme Court and then proven by the Supreme Court, the things that violate these articles will be removed from the Constitution. These include the deportation of Hispanic Americans or any other minority without due process, the fact that it inherently affects the lower class more than the middle and upper class, which would potentially go against the Equal Protections Clause. And something else that has been proposed with the bill is that if a college is not deemed ideologically neutral, potential funding for that college can be frozen. So such colleges like Harvard, which are known to support pro-Palestinian protests, could potentially have their funding frozen. The other thing we could do is protest. For example, the No Kings protest was one of the largest protests in American history, the 5th largest protest to be exact. And If we can continue to keep these protests going, it will set an agenda for how we feel about the bill. So, to go over, first we discussed the ethical and financial issues of the bill. Then we discussed why this bill is being proposed. And finally, we considered our options with regards to this bill. Now that we understand this bill, is it really too much winning? Let's say in one world, this bill passes unopposed. Millions will lose access to healthcare. College will become much less affordable, especially secondary education after the bachelor's degree. ICE would expand and become the largest government-funded agency, and discrimination would become an official policy of ICE. Will continue to be a policy of ICE, I should say. In the other world, we do what we can to oppose it. We protest, we sue, we just let the world know how we feel about it. Now, which bill sounds better to you? Because the reality is this bill will affect an overwhelming majority of Americans. Thank you.